can I have the expired cake for my son's birthday? The poor mother begged, clutching her trembling hands at a luxury bakery, but she didn't know the quiet man who heard her plea was a billionaire. And what happened next after the billionaire heard her request would make everyone speechless. Who was this poor mother really begging for? Why did that expired cake matter so much? And what secret did the billionaire hear that would change both their lives forever? The bell above the glass door chimed softly as Emily Carter, the poor mother, stepped into the bakery with her son's small hand wrapped around her finger. The smell of sugar, butter, and warm vanilla hit her like a memory she couldn't afford anymore. Her eyes moved instinctively toward the display case, where perfect cakes sat glowing under golden lights, chocolate crowns, strawberry layers, whipped cream roses. Her son Noah pressed his nose to the glass, his breath fogging it slightly, his eyes wide with a child's innocent hope. Today was his birthday. 7 years old. 7 years since Emily had promised him, every year, that things would get better, but this year, all she had was a question she was ashamed to ask. She swallowed hard, feeling the familiar burn of humiliation rise in her chest. Her worn sneakers squeaked faintly on the marble floor as she approached the counter. Behind it stood a young cashier, neatly dressed, scrolling through something on the register. A line of customers waited behind Emily, their clothes crisp, their laughter easy. Emily could feel their presence like a weight on her back. Excuse me, Emily said quietly, her voice already shaking. I wanted to ask if you have any expired cake you're going to throw away. The cashier looked up, startled. Expired cake? Yes. Emily nodded quickly, lowering her voice even more. It's my son's birthday today. I was wondering if I could have one. Just for today. Noah tugged at her sleeve. Mom, it's okay, he whispered, trying to be brave in the way only children who grow up to fast learn to be. I don't need cake. Her heart cracked at that. She forced a smile down at him, then looked back up, eyes glistening. Please, she added, the word barely audible. The poor mother begged. Even though every instinct screamed at her to run, a murmur rippled through the line behind her. Someone cleared their throat. Someone else sighed impatiently. Emily felt her cheeks burn, but she stayed where she was. She had stayed strong through eviction notices, through night shifts that never paid enough, through her husband's funeral 3 years earlier when a drunk driver took him and left her alone with a toddler and a mountain of bills. She could stay strong for this. What she didn't know was that just steps behind her stood Daniel Wright, a man most people would recognize instantly if they looked closely enough. The tailored coat, the understated watch worth more than the bakery's monthly rent, the calm posture of someone who never worried about prices. He was a billionaire. Though nothing about him screamed it. Daniel had come in for coffee while waiting for a board meeting call. He wasn't in a hurry. He almost never was. But the words expired cake for my son's birthday cut through him like a blade. He looked past Emily, at the small boy clutching her hand, at the way Emily's shoulders were hunched as if she was bracing for impact. He heard the tremor in her voice. He heard the silence that followed, heavy and uncomfortable, and something inside him shifted. The cashier hesitated. Ma'am, we usually don't. It's fine, Emily said quickly, before the refusal could fully land. I understand. I'm sorry for asking. She reached for Noah's hand again, already preparing to leave, already rehearsing how she would explain to him that birthdays didn't need cake, that wishes could be made without candles. That's enough. Daniel's voice was calm, but it carried. Everyone turned. Emily froze. The cashier blinked. The line went silent. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes not judgmental, not curious in the way people often looked at her, but steady. You said it's your son's birthday, he said. Looking at Emily now. Yes. She replied cautiously. But it's okay. We're leaving. He glanced down at Noah. Happy birthday, Daniel said simply. Noah smiled shyly. Thank you, sir. Daniel straightened and looked back at the cashier. How many cakes do you throw away at the end of the day? The cashier frowned. A few. Why? I'll buy them, Daniel said. Emily's head snapped up. No, you don't have to. I know, Daniel said gently, holding up a hand. But I want to. The cashier quickly rang it up, confused but relieved. Boxes were brought out, cakes labeled expired, still beautiful, still untouched. Daniel paid without looking at the total. Emily stared, her mouth slightly open. Sir, I can't accept this, she said, panic creeping in. I only asked for one. I don't want charity. Daniel met her eyes. This isn't charity, he said. This is a birthday. Something about the way he said it quiet, certain made her throat tighten. As the cashier packed the boxes, Daniel crouched slightly to Noah's level. Do you like chocolate? He asked. Noah nodded eagerly. And strawberry. And vanilla. Daniel smiled. Good. Then you'll have options. A few people in line wiped their eyes. Someone whispered, "That's incredible." Emily felt like she was standing in a dream she didn't understand yet. But what truly made everyone speechless wasn't the cakes. As Emily reached out to take the boxes. Daniel paused, studying her face, as if something about her had unlocked a memory he couldn't place. "May I ask you something?" he said. She nodded, confused. Why didn't you ask for help sooner? He asked softly. Not just today. Before today. The question hit deeper than she expected. Images flooded her mind. Late nights counting coins. Noah asleep on a couch in a one-room apartment. Eviction warnings taped to the door. Her husband's laugh echoing in a memory that still hurt to breathe through. Emily exhaled slowly. Because once you start begging, she said, her voice barely steady, it's hard to stop. Today was different. Today was my son's birthday. Daniel straightened slowly. He felt something heavy settle in his chest. This wasn't just about an expired cake. This was about dignity. About survival. About promises made to children who trusted too much. He looked round the bakery, at the people watching, at Emily holding back tears, at Noah hugging a cake box like treasure, and then the billionaire heard something else, not from Emily's mouth, but from the silence between her words. A silence he recognized far too well, because once, long ago, before the money, before the towers with his name on them, he had been that hungry child to ... And as Daniel Wright made a decision that would change everything, one question hung heavy in the air. What happened next when the billionaire heard her story, and why would this moment follow both of them long after the candles burned out? The next morning, Maria woke to the faint sound of Eli giggling. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains of their cramped apartment, illuminating the small, worn kitchen where she had set a meager breakfast, a bowl of oatmeal and a slice of toast. Ellie's eyes sparkled as he dug in, blissfully unaware of how close they had come to going without. Maria sat across from him, her mind still tangled in the events of the previous day. She had spent the night replaying the encounter at the cafe over and over. The memory of Daniel Whitmore, sitting there with that calm, almost unreadable expression, haunted her. Why had he listened? Why had he given her money without judgment? Without insisting she prove herself, in a world where she constantly had to justify her existence. It felt surreal to be met with pure human decency. As she cleaned the tiny kitchen, Maria couldn't help but remember the moments that had led her here. The day Eli was born, her world had shifted in an instant. A single mother at 22. She had fought tooth and nail to provide for him after his father had disappeared without a trace. She'd worked nights cleaning offices, days at the local diner, all while managing the mounting bills and endless worries that came with raising a child on her own. Every sacrifice had been worth it for Ellie's smile, yet it often left her running on sheer exhaustion, barely able to keep her own hopes alive. Meanwhile, Daniel Whitmore returned to his high-rise office, the city sprawling beneath him like a miniature diorama. The morning had started as any other meetings, phone calls, and decisions that affected millions, but the memory of Maria's plea lingered stubbornly in his mind. He could not stop thinking about the way she had carried herself, the fragile determination in her voice, and the raw honesty in her eyes. In all his years, he had encountered desperation cloaked in pride, yet hers was different, unadorned, real, and impossible to ignore. He found himself sketching scenarios in his mind, imagining what her life might be like beyond the brief intersection they had shared. He pictured her navigating crowded subways with Eli clinging to her hand, managing bills that never seemed to end, and fighting through the relentless grind of life with a courage that made him question the true value of his own wealth. But then, just as quickly, he pushed the thoughts aside. Billionaire or not, he was careful not to let strangers disrupt the ordered rhythm of his life. Yet, the thought of Maria lingered, a persistent echo that refused to be silenced. Later that day, Maria went out to run errands for the week. Walking through the busy streets, she felt eyes on her. It wasn't unusual. People often stared at her worn coat and tired eyes, but today, it was different. She caught glimpses of a familiar figure in reflections, in passing traffic, always just out of reach. At first, she thought it was paranoia, the city's chaos playing tricks on her mind, but a voice in the back of her head whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, the encounter at the cafe was not meant to fade into memory. She returned home, exhausted, and found Eli curled up with his drawings. He had a way of turning scraps of paper to entire worlds, castles, heroes, strange creatures, and Maria watched him, feeling a mix of pride and sorrow. His innocence was her salvation in her torment. It reminded her of all she had to protect, and all she feared she might fail to provide. That evening, while Maria cooked a modest dinner, there was a soft knock at the door. She froze. Visitors were rare. Most people in their building were polite but distant, and she rarely had anyone linger, heart pounding. She opened the door to find a plain brown envelope on the doorstep. No note, no name. Her hands trembled as she picked it up, glancing around to see if anyone was watching. Inside, neatly folded, was a single $20 bill and a small card that read, "For Eli, may he always eat well." Maria's breath caught. She looked round, half expecting Daniel to be there, but the street was empty. Questions flooded her mind. How had he known where to find her? Why this kindness? And most importantly, what did he expect in return, if anything? That night, as she tucked Eli into bed, Maria couldn't stop thinking about the card. She realized that something had changed, not just her hope, but the way she viewed the possibilities for her life. She felt the first flicker of belief that maybe, just maybe, fortune could smile on her and Eli without strings attached. Meanwhile, in his penthouse overlooking the city, Daniel Whitmore stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the lights below. He thought about the small apartment, the single mother, and the little boy whose life had intersected with his own in the briefest of moments. There was a tension inside him he hadn't felt in years, the urge to step beyond wealth and power, and into something human, something unpredictable, something necessary. And yet, even as he plotted his next moves, Daniel kept a secret tucked away. The choice to intervene in Maria's life, no matter how small, had awakened a curiosity he could not ignore. Why had fate placed her in his path? What unseen thread connected a struggling single mom and her son to a billionaire CEO? And if he took another step, how much of their lives and his own would change? The city slept under the veil of night, indifferent to the quiet decisions that might alter the course of two lives forever. And somewhere deep in both their hearts, Maria and Daniel were beginning a story that neither could predict, a story that would test courage, vulnerability, and the fragile power of human connection. The following Saturday, Maria ventured into the bustling city market, a place that always filled her with a strange mix of hope and anxiety. She clutched Ellie's hand tightly, navigating through the throngs of people. The smell of fresh bread mingled with roasted coffee beans, and colorful stalls spilled over with fruit, vegetables, and handmade trinkets. Every purchase was calculated, every dollar stretched as far as possible. Her mind, however, kept wandering to the envelope Daniel had left on her doorstep. What if he comes again? Eli asked, his small voice barely audible over the market's hum. He was drawing invisible castles in the air with his tiny finger. "Do you think he likes me?" Maria chuckled softly, though unease prickled her heart. "I don't know, baby. Maybe he's just kind." But Maria's gut whispered otherwise. Something about that simple act, anonymously leaving money and a card, felt deliberate, purposeful. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on gathering ingredients for the week. Meanwhile, Daniel Whitmore had been reviewing market expansion proposals in his office, yet his mind kept drifting back to Maria and Eli. He couldn't shake the way her voice had trembled with both pride and desperation, or the resilience etched into every movement she made. He had spent years in boardrooms and luxury cars, commanding billions with ease. Yet nothing had ever affected him like this small, fleeting human connection, unable to resist. He made a discreet inquiry. A quick research through public records and community networks led him to discover her apartment block, the school Eli attended, and even the market she frequented. Daniel knew he had to be careful. The last thing he wanted was to frighten her or make her feel indebted. He wanted authenticity, not obligation. But curiosity nodded him. How had this small, unassuming woman survived so long under such pressure? And why did her life suddenly feel intertwined with his? Back in the market, Maria selected fresh tomatoes, while Eli wandered slightly ahead, fascinated by a group of children performing acrobatics on the cobblestones. When she turned to call him back, she froze. There he was, Daniel Whitmore, standing at the edge of the crowd, hands casually in his pockets, observing them. He didn't approach immediately, just watched, a faint, unreadable expression on his face. Maria's heart raced. For a moment, she considered running, hiding, pretending he wasn't there. But something held her in place, something deeper than fear. She noticed a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, and she wondered if he really was the same man who had left the envelope, or if it was just a coincidence. Daniel stepped forward, closing the distance slowly, as if testing the waters. "Maria?" His voice was soft, low, deliberate, gentle yet unmistakably authoritative. Maria swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. "Yes, sir?" Asterisk I just wanted to see if you were okay, he said, carefully choosing each word. And Eli, of course. His gaze softened as it fell on the boy, who now clung nervously to his mother's leg. He seems strong. Asterisk Maria's throat tightened. He's my everything, she admitted. I try to make sure he doesn't see how hard things are for me. I don't want him worrying too soon. Asterisk Daniel nodded, the corners of his eyes crinkling faintly. I can see that, and he's lucky to have you. There was a pause, almost imperceptible, as if he were weighing how much to reveal. I wanted to make sure the money I left yesterday, that it helped. Asterisk Maria blinked. It did. More than I can say. I don't know how to thank you. I can't. Her voice faltered, embarrassed. You've done so much already. Asterisk he shook his head. You don't owe me anything, truly. I just wanted to help. His eyes searched hers, intense yet considerate. But I'm curious. Maria, how do you do it? How do you keep going? Day after day, with so little? Asterisk the question lingered like a heavy fog. Maria hesitated, then decided to answer honestly. Because I have to. Because Eli needs me. And because I can't let the world beat me down completely. Every day, I fight to give him something better than what I had. Her voice wavered, but there was fire in its resilience honed through years of struggle. Asterisk Daniel considered her words, feeling a stirring in his chest he hadn't experienced in years. Wealth and power had never taught him humility or gratitude, but this woman, this mother, was teaching him something entirely different. He wanted to step into her world. Yet he knew he had to tread carefully. One wrong move, one hint of influence, and everything could crumble. Asterisk would it be okay if I saw you again? Daniel asked cautiously. Maybe. Not here. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere you feel safe. Asterisk Maria blinked, unsure whether to be frightened or flattered. She glanced down at Eli, whose trusting eyes met hers. Could she let someone into their fragile world, someone so far removed from everything she knew? Could she trust a billionaire who had shown her kindness, but whose life was galaxies apart from hers? Asterisk I don't know, she whispered. It's complicated. Asterisk Daniel nodded slowly, as if he understood completely. I know. I'll wait. There's no rush. And with that, he turned, blending into the crowd with the same quiet composure he had always carried, leaving Maria to wonder what he truly wanted and whether this strange twist of fate was a blessing or a challenge they were both unprepared for. Asterisk as she walked home with Eli. Maria's mind raced with questions. Why him? Why now? And most importantly, could a single act of kindness truly change the course of their lives, or would it be a fleeting moment destined to fade into memory? Asterisk little did she know, Daniel was already plotting subtle ways to weave himself into their lives, testing boundaries, and carefully orchestrating small encounters that would draw them closer without ever revealing the full weight of who he truly was. And the city, indifferent as always, continued on around them, unaware of the quiet drama unfolding in the lives of a struggling single mom, her little boy, and a billionaire who had been shaken by something money could never buy. A week passed, and the rhythm of Maria's life remained in change: meager meals, endless errands, the constant hum of worry that never left her side. Yet, beneath the monotony, a new thread of curiosity and tension had woven itself into her days. She caught herself glancing at the corner cafe, half hoping to see Daniel Whitmore's familiar silhouette, and half dreading the questions that would follow if he appeared. Asterisk that morning, as Eli played with his small wooden blocks, Maria's phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Hesitant, she answered. Asterisk Maria? Daniel's voice, smooth and careful, resonated through the speaker. Would you like to meet for coffee? Just a casual chat. No pressure, no obligations. I promise. Asterisk her heart raced. She glanced at Eli, who looked up with a curious tilt of his head. Could she let a stranger, a man from another world entirely, step into their fragile lives? Her instincts screamed caution, yet something inside her whispered yes. She agreed, keeping the meeting in a public cafe she knew well, one bustling enough to feel safe yet quiet enough to speak freely. Asterisk Daniel arrived first, his tailored suit replaced by a smart casual jacket, his presence calm but deliberate. He noticed her immediately, and the small smile he gave was faint yet genuine, a crack in the steel of his usual composure. Asterisk Maria, he greeted warmly, gesturing to the chair across from him. Thank you for coming. Asterisk I wasn't sure, she admitted, her voice soft, eyes flicking around nervously. But it's okay. Asterisk Daniel leaned back, studying her without pressure. I wanted to understand your world, he said carefully. Not just the story I glimpsed yesterday, but the real life, the struggles, the sacrifices. I don't pretend to know, but I want to see. Asterisk Maria's chest tightened. Few had ever asked her about her life, truly asked, without judgment. Most people only saw poverty, or weakness, or a story they could feel pity about. But Daniel, he listened. His eyes reflected genuine curiosity, not condescension. She hesitated, then began to tell him about Ellie's father, who had disappeared before Eli could walk, leaving her alone with a child and a mountain of bills. She spoke of nights spent crying quietly so Eli wouldn't hear, of days juggling the jobs just to afford rent and groceries. She told him about the small joys, the way Ellie's laughter could cut through the thickest despair, the sketches he drew on scraps of paper, the warmth of holding his hand when the world felt too heavy. Daniel listened without interruption, absorbing every word. He had witnessed power, wealth, and influence, but never resilience like hers. He felt a tug at something deep inside, a longing to protect, to nurture, but also a knowing awareness of the chasm between their worlds. When she finished, silence stretched between them. Then Daniel spoke, voice low and measured. Maria, I want to do more than just help in small, temporary ways, but I also want to respect your life, your dignity. So I'll ask, if I extend a hand, will you accept it on your terms? Maria blinked. This was unlike anything she expected. No judgment, no obligation, just a question that placed the power back in her hands. I don't know, she admitted, the words trembling. I've been alone for so long. I'm not sure I can trust someone, especially someone like you. Daniel nodded slowly. I understand, but I promise you, I'm not here to complicate your life. I just want to help it grow, not take it over. As they spoke, Maria felt a strange tension, a pull she hadn't experienced before. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. It was something deeper, a recognition that their lives were no longer separate, that a single act of kindness had begun to ripple with the power to alter everything. Just as she began to feel a cautious optimism, her phone buzzed again. A message from the apartment complex. Rent payment overdue. Immediate attention required. Maria's stomach dropped. She excused herself for a moment, heart pounding. The reality of her life slammed back into the fragile bubble Daniel had created. Bills didn't wait, and kindness alone could not pay them. Daniel noticed her distress, his brow furrowing slightly. Is everything all right? Maria shook her head, fighting tears. It's just everything. I try to manage, but some days it's too much. He reached across the table, a tentative gesture that carried no demands, only understanding. Then let me help, not as a favor, not as charity. Let me be a part of the solution, if you'll allow it. Maria hesitated, torn. Pride battled necessity. She had always prided herself on self-reliance, but the weight of the world pressed harder than ever. She looked at Ellie's face in her mind, remembered the envelope, the card, the simple act of a stranger who had seen her struggle and chosen to care. Finally, she whispered, okay, but only because it's for Eli. Daniel nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Then that's enough for me. As they left the cafe, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that her life was poised on the edge of something monumental. The city streets felt different now, not just a maze of hardship, but a stage of possibility. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, she felt the stirrings of hope. Meanwhile, Daniel returned to his office, the city sprawling beneath him in quiet indifference. He couldn't shake the image of Maria's determination, her vulnerability, and her unwavering commitment to Eli, but along with admiration, a shadow of unease crept in. There were risks in inserting himself into her life, risks of exposure, judgment, or misunderstanding, and yet, he felt compelled. Unseen by either of them, fate was already nudging events forward. The envelope, the card, the cafe meeting, each had been a seed planted, and soon, the consequences would demand choices neither Maria nor Daniel could predict, choices that would test courage, trust, and the fragile boundaries between worlds separated by wealth, struggle, and the undeniable pull of human connection.